May I please open questions to the floor? I'll start at the back because we had a lot at the front last time, so if we may start at the back.
Hi, Keith Baker, Glasgow Caledonian University. The panel might be interested. We've got a very substantial report on energy efficiency and fuel poverty programmes coming out for Citizens Advice Scotland tomorrow. Now, as it happens, some of the recommendations, and I can't go into them all, I can say it's the biggest report of its kind that's been done in Scotland. As regards smart meters, I'm wondering what the panel think of what the panel know about any plans to use the smart meters intervention as an opportunity to get help and advice, particularly to vulnerable households. Secondly, I was wondering what the panel's views are on the current status of smart meters and what we can do to get the utility companies to invest in databases so that their customers can become real-time energy customers rather than the limited functionality of the smart meters. And finally, is anybody on the panel concerned that this really limited functionality is actually potentially going to undermine the future market for smart meters from commercial technologies?
Thank you. Victor, do you want to respond in first? I have a comment after that.
Yes, certainly. There's a number of initiatives happening around smart metering at the moment. There's the data communications company that's providing an infrastructure that is underway that will basically provide the platform across smart metering. Now, smart metering is not my area, so I'm not got particularly involved with that. I'm aware that the big providers are invested in on that, but it's a matter of then getting that data out. As far as I can see from the colleagues at Siemens, there's definitely the appetite for taking that data and doing more with it. But again, the fact that you've got so many different disparate parties between the point of the meter through to the point of reading the meter, I think it's the last figure I'd heard was around about 4 to 5 between those 2 points, means that there's a lot of problems around the fact that it's all so bundled up. What that means in the vulnerable space, I'm not so sure. But certainly, again, from my point of view, the fact that we should have access to that greater data, the greater visibility, means that we should be able to start targeting initiatives at the fuel poor.
Michael, has it been a restriction in the planning and development of the new campus, the capabilities of smart metering and where they sort of split the design?
When you work with a historic estate, we have about 400 buildings in our estate at the moment. Many of them will have a very basic meter going back to whenever the buildings were constructed. We have a programme of smart meter instrumentation about to commence, but the focus on that will be on buildings efficiencies and estates efficiencies rather than fuel poverty. So it's probably not the best example to look at on our estate for where the emphasis is on fuel poverty. So I'd have to kind of pass that on to maybe the City Council who have got. Yeah.
Alistair.
Yeah, I mean, fuel poverty is it's an important social and economic issue. I mean, in terms of the City Council's input into individual household bills, it's difficult for us. The utility companies, for example, won't share data for commercial reasons, and understanding that. So a lot of what we do in terms of working with utility companies is about the network, and it's also about the sort of demand side of management of that. So the individual is anything that helps the individual get more information. It's a bit like what we were saying earlier on about providing information to communities, and indeed providing information to a local or one individual, a local individual, is really important in terms of being able to allow them to make choices. And hopefully those choices will be of benefit to them. In terms of the City Council's input to individual choices, that is something we wouldn't necessarily get involved in. It's more to do with the network in a city like Glasgow.
And just to build on that, the laws are changing, so we're in consultation with DEC and CLG and have fed back on the freedom of data from utility companies. So they haven't been shared in the past, they are going to be shared in the future. With EPCs also opening up to be open data as well, then authorities will be in a unique position, but challenging position, because this is a much wider data set than has been freed up before. However, the software platforms that we've talked about are now becoming available. They're being developed to cope with this. And it does require, of course, the communities to take responsibility, as Alistair said. So we're linking the social problems and the social issues with these new available solutions. Please talk to me afterwards. I think there are some new teams being formed. Please. In the middle, please.
Yeah, Trevor Doherty, Midlothian Council. It's a question posed to Alistair that others want me to pick up on. It's a question of, Alistair mentioned the amount of money that's gone into the centre in Glasgow. My concern about the amount of money that's gone into the city deal and into the money there is that it's sucking investment and jobs into the centre. I'm wondering where we're going with the technology in terms of benefiting those rural communities and the peri-urban communities that are very much a greater part of Scotland and one of the areas I work in.
Yeah, I mean, City Deal in Glasgow is for the west of Scotland, so there's a number of local authorities who are involved, albeit I accept that it is a City Deal which is very much focused on Glasgow, and indeed various other cities have looked at the opportunities for them, both in Scotland and south of the border. I mean, a lot of what we're doing now in Glasgow, and I can only really speak about Glasgow because we don't have a rural or remote community in Glasgow, but a lot of what we're doing is in collaboration with other cities. There's been a lot of discussion on the eighth city, as we call it, through the Scottish Cities Alliance. So the 7 Scottish cities coming together to collaborate, and indeed we have now access to European regional development funds to develop some smart city projects in cities in Scotland. We've also been collaborating quite a lot with some of the major cities elsewhere in the UK of a similar size. And I do think, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I do think cities have become quite a focal point for a lot of advancements in technology and a lot of advancements in strategy in this area. And that seems to have been just because cities can pull things together much more readily and much more easily. The discussions that we've had, I'll give you an example of Inverness, has been through the Scottish Cities Alliance, and it's been about what's happening in Inverness as opposed to what's happening in Highland and the various remote parts of the Highland Council area. So it does seem like cities are pushing forward, and hopefully that means that other communities, smaller communities, will be able to piggyback in the back of that.
Also, just to finish that, it's worth looking at other rural communities who have worked with DEF, for example, to form their own sustainable ecosystems where they've been able to turn rural parks into effectively energy-free business campuses. So what appears to be an early problem can become actually a benefit as long as that's got the appropriate funding. So you've got the opportunity there of ground-mounted solar, wind, etc., and you've got the room to work with it. But it's getting those communities to work together. Look to something like Newstead Enterprise in Nottinghamshire. So some very interesting developments, maybe worth looking at.
Maybe I can add a comment from the electric vehicle aspect. What we've noticed is that electric vehicles currently expensive and are the plaything of the urban elite. How do we bring the benefits of clean, cheap, affordable technology to the disadvantaged, those who travel by taxi, by diesel taxi, and spend a lot of money doing that? So we've been involved in a number of research programs, including some analysis of the Castle Milk area of Glasgow, to understand how can we bring down the price of car clubs, how can we make car clubs work with electric vehicles for disadvantaged neighbourhoods. That seems to be quite feasible now. We've got interest from a number of large investors, Europcar, Enterprise and others, who can see now that there is a commercial case. There's some challenges that need to be addressed in terms of working with people who don't have a bank account to enable them to be able to book and pay for a car club vehicle. But we can bring the price down to £4 an hour, and that is commercially viable. So it's making it work at scale, but making sure we invest and think about how the benefits of new technology are shared across all aspects of the community. Otherwise, we'll get a rebellion against these things. And if you try then and take out dirty diesels from your city centre to try and improve air quality, those old diesels will be people living in the poorest neighbourhoods. So to try and tackle equality issues is absolutely essential. And that doesn't happen without intervention from the public sector to make that happen.
In the middle, please. Behind you.
Derek Mills from DL Research. I was really looking forward to climate change because when it came out, I thought it was a great opportunity for us to really show the energy enthusiasm which we have, particularly in Scotland, for delivering the impossible projects. I was involved nearly 8 years at Solon Vole in the Shetland, and most recently where the Scottish companies have built a gas plant to supply, I think it's 10% of UK gas. Now, the point that I started with that, I think the councils have got a great opportunity. Edinburgh had the council tax challenge, and I would say that currently councils provide water to every household and business in Scotland. I would say there's an opportunity for coordination with the utility companies to do electricity, gas, heat, cooling, and provide broadband data services. There's a whole host of things that we've got an opportunity to provide. And the reason why I put that forward is that globally, there's a massive amount of money available from wealth funds, sovereign funds, that are not getting their returns. I believe by coordinating and working together with the expertise that we've got in Scotland, particularly as the oil sector has shown that I think there's 15,000 experts in Scotland from the oil and gas that are sitting at home doing nothing, that we can put them forward to actually come up with a coordinated plan to put a scheme together to show that Scotland can actually do it for themselves, but more importantly, that they can show that they can do it on a global scale by showing how we can deliver a complex...
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of questions in there, so maybe if we can pick a couple of those. I think in that question is both the leadership issue of a city utilities leadership, but is it one of facilitation, is it one of city investment, and maybe what is the reaction from panel members? Interested in that. I'm certainly working with some cities that have their own energy companies, but some that clearly don't. Do you understand?
Just on the idea of what cities can do in relation to energy, it's funny how in a city like Glasgow, in my grandmother's day, it was a corporation, and Glasgow did everything. The corporation did everything. It looked after the buses, the houses, it looked after electricity, and everything was done through the corporation. And we kind of went away from that, and all of a sudden for energy we're starting to move back to that. You know, we created this idea of the big six, and now because it's not really working, we're starting to move back to more kind of localised energy systems. In Glasgow, we've had discussions about an ESCO. We do have an internal ESCO, but a lot of the issues for us, and I think for many city or local authorities, is about the risks and the liabilities that are attached to that. And if I say to my Director of Finance, look, we want to put out some electricity bills and your name's going to be at the bottom of it, she looks at me in absolute horror. So there are issues about risks and liabilities that have to be conquered before we get to that kind of ideal model of a local authority taking on energy per se.
I think if you travel down south a little bit and go to Nottingham, they have probably the best name for any energy company in Robin Hood Energy, which is now set up, functioning, run by the local authority, selling the cheapest, lowest carbon energy available within the Nottingham area. They're generating their own, both in terms of solar and in terms of their energy from waste plant, and that energy company is growing and prospering, and their chief executive is delighted to have their name actually at the bottom of the bill, because they think they're actually providing a better service and a better, lower carbon energy. The work we're doing with them is how that's now to be integrated into their Robin Hood card for mobility. So you have one card and one payment mechanism that includes mobility for your buses, your trains, your tram, your charging point, your car club. The only point that's not connected at the moment is actually the charging points. So Nottingham will be generating its own electricity for its own charging points, which will all be part of a one payment mechanism. So I think it's worth having a look at what they're doing there. It's quite impressive.
And it's also where you are on your investment cycle against your priorities. So looking at the regeneration of Stoke, for instance, that is in a position where it's got it's won a city deal. It's at a point where it hasn't had, as Liverpool Mayor said, one of our greatest problems is we haven't done much in the city. One of our biggest benefits is we can learn from everybody else now as we start to regenerate, similarly with Stoke. However, for other cities, it's by no means the best investment they can make. Looking to Malmo, when they're in a similar position, they built a bridge which tripled their economy because it linked low-value housing with high-value business, and they partnered with utility companies to still achieve one of the greenest cities in the world. So it's not one for all. It has to be customised to where people are on their economic strategy. At the front here, please. And we've got time. I think we'll take two more.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Bell, Fife Council, but I also work as director for community groups in Edinburgh. My question is, how do you think this ownership and control of assets by communities is going to actually work in terms of people time and money? Because we talk about control of assets of energy system or creating an energy system, and that can take years of time, people who are working outside of their job. And if, with some community councils that I'm working with now in Fife, they can't afford to take a day off work because they won't get paid to come to a community meeting to try and organise stuff. So in the real world, how is that going to work? I'd really be interested to know, because I'm working with the communities in Fife to try and look how we can create this local energy system that's locally owned. But how am I going to tell my guys how they're going to get paid? Are you going to have to work after hours? You don't see your family. You know, what's the reality?
Okay, well, I think we've probably got some interesting perspectives on that. Let me take it first. So my business is doing exactly that. I'm the CEO of Smart Club, and we're set up on, first of all, the process of not putting communities through having to learn on their own for the first time, reinventing the wheel. So the first thing is to put in front of your communities a free knowledge base. Along with that, a free tool set. But that's not going to work if people are too busy to be able to engage. So the other thing that we set up is this first mover, the captain of change is building on the existing community leaders and helping them switch on to energy. If we can get the community leadership, like yourself, and we can come along together, then you can learn from all the work done in Milton Keynes, in Nottingham, in Exeter, and we've got a 10-year history in helping cities learn how to take control. The funding side, again, it's becoming there's more and more opportunity in group funding. You don't even need to be funded from within your city, because we'll match you with ethical investors who want your roofs. So it's more a case now of we're looking for people who want the benefit of, say, free solar. They don't have to make the investment themselves, because we've got investors elsewhere who have run out of roofs to invest in, and they want to do good. So at one stage, it's a complex environment, but by simplifying it into groups of engaged and experienced investors, technologists, etc. And a final point on Smart Club's way is we deliver that global intelligence locally. In the Milton Keynes project we're working on, we've got 1,000 volunteers through organised community action. Now that's community groups coming together to act in a coordinated way. The City Council, it's essential that they sponsor that, so we've made sure and taken the time to understand their strategy and make sure that the community's work is in line with the city's strategy. We've built the software platforms, therefore, to enable the data that these communities already own and to give the value back to them. Now all that's required is the aggregation and grouping of who wants to take just a small interest. Some people just want to learn. Some people want to make an investment. Some people want to work as a bigger group. They may not even have a computer. They're beyond the digital divide. They want their neighbour to help them. So in there are social issues that need solving. There are technology issues that need solving. There are investment issues that need solving. They can all come together. I recommend you start a Smart Club, but there'll be other ideas on this panel. Certainly Keith's been involved in similar projects in the past, so I think I'll probably pass to Keith first and maybe back to Alistair for a comment.
I think I think it is a real challenge. I mean, I'm involved in a number of community energy groups myself, and people are busy. They want to do things, they want to make something happen, but they don't necessarily have the skills to put the business case together. They don't necessarily have the skills to get the finance and to do the feasibility. Historically, there was funding available. You take a seed of an idea, you could then employ consultants to help you put a business case together, you could present back to your community and see if it worked. And unfortunately, certainly in England, that funding is gone. The government has pulled away from community energy. They don't want community-owned renewables. They don't want that to happen. That's a clear government policy within England. I think it's different in Scotland. There's a lot more support up here. But without that initial seed funding, it becomes a great challenge. And I think that certainly from an England perspective, most communities have given up on putting together community energy programs. With the cut in the feed-in tariff, the lack of support for feasibility studies, it's just impossible. And I don't think that it's going to happen at all in England, and I think the government are very pleased about that, and probably some of the big energy companies too. I think it's a real shame.
Alistair.
It's actually quite an interesting cultural discussion, because when you look at some of the communities in Scotland who've actually made some real good advances in this, places like the Isle of Egg or Fintry and Stirling, it picks up on what that gentleman further back was saying earlier on about how, you know, outside of the cities, how do you get communities to get involved? And my perception of this is that that kind of community cohesion exists better in some of the smaller communities that we don't get in cities, and it's quite difficult sometimes to get communities to come forward in cities like Glasgow or Edinburgh. There is funding available for community projects, and I think for councils like Glasgow or Fife, it would be about us being able to facilitate that and show some leadership. So in Glasgow, we have started to run one or two small renewable energy projects, and what my hope would be in the future is that we'll be able to show communities, look, it worked for us, we used our estate, it happened here, it worked, it gave us an income, it gave us a revenue, you can now do that in your own local community, and we'll show you what to do.
Perhaps, if I may, not speaking just really for Siemens, but I don't speak for anyone else particularly on that either. It seems to me that one of the things that Siemens, and I'm sure other big corporates, are looking to do is to get out there, to understand the models and to then replicate the models, effectively setting up manufacturing and the chain and the repeatability of that manufacturing. And the issue that I have in the role that I've got is trying to talk to the communities and try and get engaged with those communities. There's such a big disconnect between corporates, big business like ourselves, and these communities, and that's for many obvious reasons, but therefore that's the suggestion through things like Smart Club and so on, to try and bring those parties around the table and to get them talking. And those corporates bring a lot of good things. They bring the technologies. In cases like Siemens, they bring financing, expertise. And one area that perhaps I can push back to yourselves as well when you're talking and in the dialogues with businesses like Siemens is the whole CSR, corporate social responsibility. Purely by way of example, every person, all of the 14,000 people within Siemens within the UK are mandated that they can have up to 2 days paid time to get out and volunteer and get engaged with the society. So there's 28,000 days available to the community, perhaps. I'll come along for a day or two, yeah.
I think we've got time for one more question. At the front here.
This morning we focused a lot on electricity, smart, this and that. Both DEC and the Scottish Government have recognised that heat comprises 55% of the delivered energy in Scotland. I wonder, as a slightly different element, whether any of the panel have got any comments about district heating, the possible role that the £300 million that the Chancellor in the autumn statement last year allocated to district heating financial support. Have you got any comments? Obviously, in the University of Glasgow, it was great to hear the vision that you've got. But how does this tie in and with grid balancing as well?
I just start with a practical example of the tightening of planning. So with new developments coming, obviously there's a pressure on a lot of new build throughout the whole of the UK. And what started originally with the London plan and the need to show a total site minimum carbon impact led to virtually all of the London new developments going on some form of district heating. My own company was involved, I think, in 20 new district heating schemes. So that planning drove the investment case. We've seen that planning tightened across other city councils now, and a lot more have it in legislative plans for the future. Again, through personal projects I'm working on and seeing how the investment markets are responding, I think there's been an over-reliance on public demonstrators where these are actually becoming very practical new build parts of common business. So particularly where developments are also being co-built next to industrial parks, I've not seen so much district heating as we are in this year. There is a whole plethora of new schemes coming through, as well as with new financing tools, particularly the private equity markets, who are prepared to look at more schemes with a lesser time of financial due diligence, which quite often cripples the scheme because you can't get through the very, very high cost of financial due diligence. Also, we sit on a European fund worth about 3.5 million of due diligence money. So if you do have a scheme that you believe is extremely beneficial and looks like it would work from just early outset, then we can put that forward for accelerated due diligence work, and there's a fund to do that, because that for me is the greatest frustration. There's some excellent district heating projects that stack up, but they cannot afford the due diligence to get them properly evaluated. So either the private equity funds or to go through something like the special funds set up to crack those projects. I would not be holding those schemes back. Panel.
I think if we looked at our district heating scheme, it's just been commissioned in the last couple of months. Should be fully operational at the start of the new term. It runs right up to the boundary of the university's estate, so that there is scope for further expansion if the demand is there. But the one thing the university will say is that we are not a utilities company, so that pushing the university that extra step into becoming a district ESCO will take a bit of time, because there's a cultural shift there as well. That said, the unique opportunities on our estate, I think, are certainly worth exploring, because you have this enormous heat load from the university, a stone's throw away from the major municipal art collection, a stone's throw away from the new Kelvin Hall facility, which is enormous and which will have to be heated 365 days a year. Round the corner from the Riverside Museum likewise, and a stone's throw from the creation of 2,500–3,000 new student housing units in that part of the city, alongside a few public buildings which are a stone throw from our energy centre as well. It certainly sits up as worth looking at as the university testing the potential of becoming a district ESCO for the west of the city, based around the very reliable heat loads required from the public sector and the very reliable heat loads created by, a demand created by student halls of residence, which are full for 48 weeks of the year. So in terms of a business proposition there, yes, it sits up quite well, but in terms of university leading that, we're not so sure, because it's not our core business. However, if it generates revenue, if it lessens our dependence on gas, and if it lowers the impact of our development, then I think the university should look at it.
I think in summary, it's an opportunistic market in the UK at the moment. It's going to mature very, very quickly, and we'll see it become a core function. And if we look at European demand, it's a very established business, which it will be here as well. Okay, if I may ask everyone to thank the panel in the usual way.